Welcome to this week's Leading with Purpose podcast. It's a podcast where we explore how leaders are really putting purpose into their roles, how they are breaking down barriers and using their roles to drive social mobility. I'm delighted that this week we've got Helen Bradbury with us. She's Chief People Officer at E.ON. It's a company that lots of us have heard about, but it's doing some brilliant stuff on social mobility. We're really proud to have it as part of the Purpose Coalition. So, Helen, first of all, thanks for coming on the podcast today. And I guess we should start with perhaps you explaining your role, but also the journey that you've had to become CPO at E.ON now.
Yes, and thank you for having me. Really good to see you today, Justine. So I'm the Chief People Officer at E.ON in the UK, and that means that I'm responsible for the HR, internal communications, and also the property function here in the UK. And I like to describe it as all the elements that make up the experience of working at E.ON. I've been in the energy industry for over 25 years now, so I spent a long time in the industry and seen a huge amount of change during that time. Spent the first part of my career in a variety of marketing and communications roles before moving into colleague engagement and then wider people and HR roles. And I think that background of understanding customer experience, segmentation, branding and engagement all help in my role and the role of a people function within businesses today, and particularly alongside my fantastic team.
And it's interesting because you're right, it is all about people, whether it's the people that you're serving as customers or the people who are, part of a team helping to deliver that. And is shifting into that kind of area something that you'd always wanted to be in, or when you were at school, for example, what were you thinking that Helen was going to do then when she grew up?
Well, interestingly, when I was at school, I always wanted to do journalism and ended up going into marketing and communications. But I think I've always had an interest in people, always. Even in the early part of my career, I was always really interested in the impact that an engaged and connected colleague base can have on the customer experience, and also on the overall delivery of a company's business strategy and plans, having that alignment and that connection to the organisation, and seeing the impact that that can have.
Did you just see, was that something you were sort of working out for yourself, or were there moments when you really thought, hang on, actually these things are inherently part of how we drive this organisation forward?
I think a bit of both. I think we, as an organisation, went through a huge amount of business change and transformation and could really see the impact of that on colleagues and the importance of helping colleagues to connect with that change, to connect with what we were trying to achieve as a business. That particularly sparked my interest. But I think also I've always been interested in supporting talent, and supporting development of organisational culture. I've always found that of particular interest to me. And just the importance of having a great place to work and helping to remove barriers to progression so that people can thrive and everyone can achieve their potential is something that was a particular interest.
Obviously, for you, it really matters. I mean, it's brilliant you're having you part of the advisory council for the Purpose Coalition.
Hmm.
And I just think that contribution you make as part of that is fantastic. Clearly, and so in a sense, I kind of see you amongst the other people, and if you like, the impact that has, and
Hmm.
how you input into all of the discussions. But how do you get that sense of purpose that you've got? Why you think all of this matters? What's the key to being able to instill that across a much wider organization? I think there's something like 10,000 people at E.ON. It doesn't just happen, does it?
No, and you're absolutely right. Our organisation in the UK, it's made up of 10,000 brilliant colleagues who all want to do great things for our customers. And I really see my role and the role of the wider people team as to remove barriers and give support and development to help them to do that. Me personally, I've spent a large part of my career at E.ON. I've experienced firsthand the benefits of a supportive learning culture and a culture that gives you the opportunity to develop and progress and to step into different types of roles and really take those skills and try them in different areas. And I've
And I
also,
guess that's what as you're saying, that's literally been the story of your own journey.
Yes, absolutely. And as I said, I've had that first-hand experience of that and really see it as important to play that forwards and to support others in that way. I've also been a long time supporter of flexible working. I've got an 18-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, but in 18 years, I've done a huge number of different flexible working arrangements and again, had that kind of first-hand experience of the benefits of being able to continue to do interesting work whilst at the same time being able to balance off building a career and home family life as well. And that's definitely shaped my perspective in terms of the benefits of being flexible as an employer and the importance of creating that environment where people can really show up and continue to develop themselves alongside changes in family situations and life changes. And I guess for me, to your question around purpose, I think it's really about helping people connect with the why,
Hmm.
helping colleagues to understand the need for change, the business's strategy, the need for transformation maybe, and really connecting colleagues' personal why with the organisation's purpose and for them to be able to see their role in that. And I think, as a leader, it's about living the values and really putting those values at the heart of decision making.
And I guess over the years, you've seen that sense of purpose just grow in so many ways, not least because of the importance of reaching net zero, energy affordability. I mean, on every single level, the transformation of the sector has been enormous, hasn't it?
Yeah, huge. We see, and as most organisations do, that increasingly candidates are looking to organisations where there is a fit with personal purpose.
Hmm.
Working in the energy sector, it's not hard for us to find purpose as we look to play our part in leading the energy transition. And, for us at E.ON, we talk about that's about making new energy work. And it's about making new energy work for our customers by leading the transition to accessible, affordable and sustainable energy. And we know that connects really well with our colleagues. And, choosing a career in the energy industry gives an opportunity to be part of that and to develop green skills and help deliver the UK's clean energy ambitions. And we also know from our own research that young people starting their careers are particularly interested in green careers and building the skills that they know they need for a more sustainable future. And at E.ON, we talk about every role really being a green role. It's an opportunity for everyone to play that part in the energy transition. So, I think for me and my team, we're there as an enabler to help the business to deliver on that purpose and to help people see the connection between what they're doing day to day with that overall sense of purpose that we have as a business.
But intrinsically, it sounds like in so many ways, being able to get that sense of belonging is something that is as much as anything just about leaning into what the business is there to do, and actually it's never been more important, I guess, or more
Yeah,
stage.
absolutely. And, a real opportunity for people to get a real sense of purpose from the world of work and to feel like they're making a contribution to something bigger. And, as a team, we really look at how do we make sure that we can help people with that and that we've got the right people with the right skills in place. And that, we look at everything across how do we create a great place to work and how do we ensure that purpose is fed through our recruitment practices, onboarding, engagement, recognition, development. We really feel that colleagues should be able to feel what they do every day contributes to that overall sense of purpose.
So basically, in summary, this is a company that's focused on energy and planet, but in the end, the people side of this is at the heart of how you'll actually achieve all of those objectives. And it's probably a good time to dig into some of the stuff you were talking about that your team does, some of those networks that are there for E.ON, um, the groups that you're particularly trying to make sure you're open to.
Hmm.
How have you almost built that scaffolding to create that kind of organization, to have the processes in place that make it all happen? How have you gone about doing that?
So, we talk about inclusivity being at the heart of who we are as an organization. And we have aspirations. We want everyone to feel welcomed, respected, and able to thrive. And it's a core value that genuinely shapes the culture that we've got. We know that we're at our best when people feel that they belong and can be their true selves. And fundamentally, we believe that diversity is essential
Mhm.
to our success. Our diverse backgrounds and experiences help us to connect with our customers and the communities in which we operate, and very much puts them at the heart of what we do. So I think there's a values piece there that we firmly believe it's the right thing for us as an organisation. And also we believe that we'll be more successful as a result of having an inclusive organisation. I would say inclusion and purpose at E.ON are really led by colleagues right across the business. It's not something
Mhm.
that just
Mhm.
sits in an area. I'd say it's very much felt to be a shared commitment right across the colleague base. And I think colleagues and partners work really hard day in and day out. We don't see it as a activity that we do at key points of the year. It's something that we know takes long-term commitment and action to make a difference on. And we couldn't do that without the thousands of colleagues right across the business that work really hard on this, day in, day out, whether that's them sharing their experiences, voicing the experience of being an employee,
Mhm.
whether that's championing change, whether that's people sponsoring and mentoring other people. It really is a result of 10,000 people working together on that. And I
And then
guess,
additional employee networks that give them other ways to connect up, perhaps with, like-minded, colleagues.
yeah. Yeah. So, I always say our inclusion approach is twofold. It's first of all, as I say, it's that long-term commitment over many years. And we know that there is always more that we want to do. And so it's not resting. It's about saying, what more can we do to really build on that great place to work and to build an inclusive organization? And the second one is that it's very much led on that colleague-led approach. So it's based on colleagues right across the business working together. And just some examples of that would be, we have 9 colleague-led inclusion networks
Mhm.
that are very active across the business. I think we have about 1 in 3 colleagues who are actively involved in at least one inclusion network. And they are there to support colleagues and promote and foster inclusivity, but also they are a really important vehicle to enable colleagues' voices to be heard. And as a result, we can then work on feedback that we're getting and look at changes that we can make, practical changes that we can make to policies, to colleague journeys that help to remove some of the barriers to progression. And as I say, ensure, and ultimately our ambition is that we're an organisation where everyone can thrive.
Because I guess otherwise you do a great job of bringing in all these different sorts of people at the recruitment stage, but actually the real key is to keep them and to allow them and that different ways of thinking to flow up the organization. So these really are the groups alongside everything else that help make sure the things that might get in the way of that get sorted out, which is in everyone's interest.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, there's a lot of work done to listen to colleagues, to get that feedback. And I think that's really important. It's not making assumptions. It's about
Mm.
actually listening to different colleague groups and to hear what they're saying, and then to work together to look at how we can make improvements, make progress around those key things. We talk about the clean energy transition as being a people powered one. We've got a
Mhm.
requirement for key skills right across the sector. Um, we need to create opportunities, and we need to create those career pathways right across the sector. And I think that's really important to both encourage people to come into the sector and then to create the right environment for people to succeed. And some of the things that we've done practically around skills pathways are working with organisations like STEM returners,
Mhm.
the work that we do in apprenticeships, some of the development programs that we have in place that really look at supporting widening access to careers and then ensuring that we can help people progress once they're in the organisation.
And I guess, the demand for skills is so great that you need to find that talent. The kinds of skills that are now used in energy are steadily morphing over time. AI will change it all over again. And so you're constantly looking for that broadest possible talent pool for apprenticeships for some of those early careers. And I suppose you can never really stand still, can you?
No, and you're absolutely right. We are competing in a competitive labour market, and we need to be able to attract people into the sector, attract people to the organisation. And then, of course, we need to be able to retain people and develop people while they're here. And we don't take that for granted. We know that we need to be competitive. We need to have a great place to work to be able to encourage people to come and spend their careers with us. Lots of different ways that we're doing that. And I think, some of the things that we're doing in the early careers space
Hmm.
in particular is around apprenticeships. You've mentioned that as well. It's really a cornerstone of our approach at E.ON, and we really see these as offering valuable alternatives to some of the traditional higher education routes for those that maybe feel that a different path is the right choice for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Since 2018, we've had over 1,300 apprentices that have completed different apprenticeship schemes within the UK. That's across 90 different programs. So that gives you a sense of scale in terms of a real variety of apprenticeships that we offer. Our own reports show that colleagues that undertake apprentices are it's leading to increased productivity, greater career mobility. So there really is benefit both organisationally and to the individual.
I suppose, 10 years ago, maybe this was a newer thing and people were less used to it. But
Yeah.
now it's really part of the organization, isn't it? And it's not an unusual career pathway. And it must be incredibly satisfying, Helen, starting to see some of those people get into more senior roles over time, and perhaps the ones that came through in those first 2, 3, 4 years that you were running the apprenticeships.
Yeah, hugely satisfying. And, it's a credit to the apprentices themselves in terms of when they come join the business and the development that they have committed to. Many green roles, they just don't require a university degree in the traditional sense. We have a wide variety of different apprenticeship schemes, as I say, on offer. That's everything from solar PV installation, it could be accounting, it could be digital technology roles, project management, smart energy systems. There are a huge amount of different apprenticeships on offer. And those skills aren't just relevant now, they are essential skills that we need for the future. So, really important that we are developing that future talent with that skill set coming through the business. And as I say, we've done research internally. 67% of young people are telling us that they believe they'll gain workplace skills faster through apprenticeships. And a few years ago, we made the conscious decision to move away from traditional graduate schemes. We still offer those through our group. That's part of an international graduate scheme. But in the UK, we moved to degree apprenticeships, and we've had huge success with those. And the scheme has grown year on year. And really, really pleased that, 100% of people that are completing those degree apprenticeships are then taking up full-time roles in the organisation. And they've had the opportunity of 4 or 5 years to earn a competitive salary whilst at the same time completing a university degree, and they come out with fantastic skills, experience, and also what's really, really important is they've built a network as well across the business, ready for the start of their careers.
Such a good point. And I think the other thing that comes across with the breadth of apprenticeships that you're offering at E.ON is it's easy to think that you're an energy company. So if I'm not an engineer or I'm not focused on that, then somehow, maybe if I'm not a science focused person, it's not for me. But as your career demonstrates, people who are into marketing, who want to go down a HR route, who are maybe like me and they're more of a finance background, those skills are needed in every single company. And that's including E.ON and the wider energy sector. So there's just such a breadth of offer there for people, isn't there, over time? I guess for Ian, the other interesting thing is, obviously your chief exec, um, Chris Norbury, himself was a CPO,
That's
and
right.
I think in many respects, it's that new kind of leadership, isn't it? If you really want to be able to progress in an organization, understanding how to drive that culture that sense of purpose, how to connect with the people who are part of that organization with you is just absolutely essential. And I would say when I started in my career, it's interesting, part of what attracted me to finance was, you got a lot of CFOs who ended up being the CEO. I think now just being able to do the numbers, it's not enough, is it? You need to have that much more intangible sense of a leadership capability, don't you, to really go onwards and upwards. So yeah, it is fascinating to hear you talk about the organization that you've built. I guess I should also bring us on to some of the Purpose Coalition work with E.ON, because as part of that, we've really kicked the tires in a sense of what E.ON does across what are the purpose goals. These are 15 different goals. For people who are listening to this, perhaps don't know the purpose goals. They basically break down social mobility into these constituent challenges. Some of it's education, some of it is connecting to opportunity, some of it is the things that hold you back, whether it's health and well-being, digital divide, entrepreneurship, access to finance and credit. And so what we've done with E.ON as part of the coalition is to map all of the stuff that you're doing, Helen, with your team and the wider company against those goals. And I think I remember us first pulling it all together. And I think there were two things. First of all, it was amazing just how many of the goals you were touching on in terms of social mobility. Some of the work you were doing that was place-based in places like Coventry was just absolutely fantastic. But I think it's just interesting to hear from you in a sense about how that comprehensive assessment for E.ON, how that shaped your thinking in a way, how you used it, whether it's helped you get further faster in a sense on how you've developed your thinking since we began all of that work.
Yeah, I think for me, I think partnership is probably the thread that runs through it all. Working with the Purpose Coalition and aligning to the purpose goals that you've just talked about really helps us target where we can remove barriers most effectively, whether that's investing in skills pathways, such as, for example, STEM returners, as I mentioned before, or how we develop apprenticeship programs and other activity that supports widening access and progression. I think our partnership with the Purpose Coalition has really helped us to shape that. And importantly, to share and tap into best practice as well from other member organisations. I think that's incredibly useful. The contacts that we can make and the sharing of
But not reinventing the wheel.
not reinventing the wheel, exactly. Finding those what's worked well elsewhere, what hasn't worked so well. I think it's important to share both, the successes, but also the things that people would do differently. And I think we've got a huge amount out of that in terms of the connections that we've been able to make and the sharing of those experiences. I also think the purpose goals really give us a shared language, and it helps us to link colleague experience with community impact. That's the green skills mentoring in schools, for example, to local partnerships that really help to improve homes, health and opportunity for people. I think that connection between what we do externally and what we do internally, I think is really important, and it helps us to explain that story as well internally to our colleagues. And by embedding inclusion, well-being and digital confidence across our workforce, we can really strengthen delivery on the ground. And then I think the last thing I'd say is our impact report. I know we're finalising our updated impact report for 2025. And obviously we do that in close collaboration with you. And I think what that serves to do is it really holds up a mirror to ourselves so that we can really challenge ourselves around how we continue to take bold action. I think one of the things that we talk about is we've got a lot to be proud of, but we know we're not done, but there is more to do. And I think working with the Purpose Coalition, and in particular that impact report, really helps us challenge ourselves around, are we doing enough? Are we doing it quickly enough? Is there more that we can do? So that's incredibly helpful. I look forward to the report coming out.
Yeah, me too. And I think if you reflect on that journey, where would you really point to in terms of progress that you're most proud of?
Do you know, I think we're always quite hard on ourselves. We always say that there is more to do, and we recognise that for sure. But we do work really hard day in, day out on how we can continue to build on what we've got. We talked before about it's a competitive labour market. And we know that in order to attract and retain and develop the best talent, we have to be a really great place to work. So as a result, we're constantly focused on how we develop our colleague experience to support that. And we recognise the link between a great colleague experience and a great experience for customers as well. That's really, really important. And whilst we know it's a journey, it's really important to recognise progress. And, there's a lot for colleagues to be really proud of right across the business. I think the highlight for us this year, I think, has been being named the best place to work for 16 to 34-year-olds and one of the top 10 best places to work overall by the Sunday Times. Yeah, we're really pleased. And I think in particular, because that award is based on the feedback from colleagues. It's not based on an award entry. It's based on the feedback that colleagues are giving about what it's actually like to work here. And, it's very much an award for all the colleagues across the business that work so hard to make it a really, really great place to work. Outside of all of that, we continue to work really hard on our development networks, on our inclusion networks, on ensuring that we are opening up access to development opportunities and widening the access to those. Some of what we've done over the last few years has included, we've completely moved away from traditional talent pools.
Mm-hmm.
And we have replaced those with open access development networks. And that includes access to learning resources. So ultimately, if you want to get on and develop, you have access to the learning resources to be able to do that. And in the last year or so, we have launched an online platform that gives colleagues access to opportunities, project opportunities, for example, where they can really get hands-on experience. That's our internal careers marketplace. We call it My Careers Hub. And we also give access to an online platform for learning support. And I think over the last 12 months, I think we've had something like 5,500 digital online courses being completed by colleagues. So we continue to work on some of those platforms that really support the development of our colleagues.
Really allowing people to increasingly tailor their own learning and development when they want it, how they want it, and not sort of jacketing them into the role that they're in at the moment.
That's absolutely right. And also, I think traditional talent pools felt quite exclusive. They felt like you had to pass an assessment to get into them. It
Mm-hmm.
was quite a small group of people that had access to that support. And actually, by moving to this open access, we've unlocked it for thousands of colleagues to be able to benefit from those. And what we're seeing, because we track outcomes quite closely around the different interventions that we put in place, and what we've seen is a significant increase in terms of movement around the organisation. So whether that's sideways moves, whether that's promotions, we can see that if you are a member of one of these development networks, you are significantly more likely to be promoted or to have a development move across the business. So we're really starting to see the impact that can have.
It's just great to see, I think, how much you're innovating actually, Helen, at E.ON to open up opportunities. And, we often debate social mobility, the challenges, but I think one of the reasons I absolutely love doing the Purpose Coalition is because there are companies like E.ON who are part of it, who are literally working out how to remove the barriers that stop people from connecting up to opportunities. As you say, really not just doing that, but tracking, and interestingly seeing that all the evidence is that when you do remove barriers, people do start to work out how they can make the next step, where they want to go, what they need to do to support themselves in that. And as you can see with your results on being a great place to work, it absolutely percolates through into brilliant feedback. People, I think, by the sounds of it, still continuing careers with moves, but able to do that within a business that they really enjoy being part of anyway, that they think matters, that has a sense of purpose. So there's so much, I think, for other people to learn from in terms of what you've been talking about. But I think most importantly, how you brought it alive for E.ON. And I think almost finishing where we started, if we come back to your own journey, your sense of purpose that you've sort of brought to this and the leadership. If there are people watching this thinking this all sounds, it resonates with them, and they want to maybe bring this mentality more into their own work, into their life, what sort of advice would you give people? It's a big question, but what's your advice on how they can perhaps follow that kind of lead that you set?
Good question. I'm always really interested in other people's answers to these types of questions. I think for me, first of all, I'd say be really clear on what your why is. Where is your passion, and how can you link that passion with your skills and experiences, and find a role, find something to do that really connects with that. I think then it's about trying to link what you do every day to that larger mission, that larger sense of purpose. And I think that helps to create meaning for you in your day-to-day job, but also as a leader helps to create meaning for other people. So I'd say start with that. Think about how your values and the organization's values impact on your work so that you can make decisions with those in mind. Really helps to have that clear thread going through what you do. I'd say be curious and listen actively. And seek input from voices and underrepresented groups, and work really hard on that. Don't make assumptions, and really listen to what people are telling you about the experiences that they have. And I think what's important in doing that is creating that psychological safety. So making sure that it's really clear that voices are welcome and that those are opportunities to learn. And then I think probably the last thing I would say is the importance of talking about progress, about celebrating success along the way, celebrating colleagues that are doing the right thing, that are really contributing towards the delivery of what the business is trying to achieve, recognizing those great examples. And as we said, the impact that's having. I think cultural development can feel like a very long-term thing. And as I say, we're always wanting to look at how we can build further and make further improvements. But along the way, it's really important to recognise the progress that's been made.
It's fantastic. I got a very comprehensive list there, Helen. It's really impressive. Um, Brilliant stuff. Some really genuinely great advice for people. I think starting off with the why, what drives you and how can you kind of tap into that is probably where it does all start in a way. I think it's interesting that almost looking inside is how you become more effective outside as a leader, because it's
Yes.
got to be authentic, really, hasn't it, at the end of the day, I guess?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And also, to have that sense of purpose and achievement in what you do day on day, I think it's really, really important.
Well, we've got to finish the podcast there, but Helen Bradbury, Chief People Officer at E.ON UK, it's just been fantastic having you on the podcast today. Some really great insights, really great practical examples of what you're doing within E.ON. And we're really proud to have you part of the Purpose Coalition. So thanks for doing the podcast today.
You're very welcome. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's great to be part of the Purpose Coalition as well. Thank you.
Thank you.